to get to it.
That's right. You're on the wrong side of the desk. Come on now. Yeah. Right, good stuff.
Hello.
Jeez, I think that's my phone every time that happens.
I've got coffee news.
Okay, like Christian or Chris?
Christian. And is Bob okay?
Yep.
All right.
Good
stuff.
Or request your ad at SudburyCoffeeNews.com.
It is a tower of hope and a vision of the future as shared as the sky. It will be a forum for new dialogue based on inclusion
You've
and
never done radio before?
a place
You
where
don't-
I've done interviewing, but never run the show.
Opening September 20th.
I've been with since 68.
Oh, you're kidding.
The Canadian Museum for Human
Started
Rights.
January
Please go
16th.
to humanrights.ca for more
Jeez.
information.
Same type of thing.
become engaged and
You meet a lot of
be
people.
inspired.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding. Well, that's, I mean, your archive is
All
amazing.
Origin University
So, here we
students
go.
have a safe and happy school year
There's
from
a lot there.
CKLU 96.7 FM, your campus and community radio station.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're back with the Learning Clinic here on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your guest host, Christian Robinson. And our next guest, I'm really pleased to introduce, is none other than the regular host of the very broadcast you're currently listening to. Robert Kirwan is a current, or I suppose now past, school trustee with the Rainbow District School Board. Someone who's clearly been very engaged by local issues for many, many years. With a strong background in education, Bob set out to create a broadcast during this election year that would provide listeners with an unprecedented opportunity to get behind the sound bites that dominate the current media landscape, and in so doing, he created this program, which is a truly unique political talk format allowing for a free flow of ideas from candidates to fully explain and flesh out their concepts for their election platforms, and maybe even a more broad civic governing philosophy. Bob subsequently decided to run for council himself in Ward 5 and has temporarily stepped aside from the broadcast that he lovingly curated, which is a story in and of itself, and I hope that Bob will fill you in post-election on that. But for now, I am delighted to be joined by Bob Kirwan here in his CKLU studio. Hello, Bob.
Hey, thanks a lot, Christian. It's a pleasure to be on my show.
I was going to say this must be a very strange mirror image for
Well,
you.
it
being
is.
on the flip
It's a
side
real
here.
different perspective because instead of looking at the clock, I'm looking at Rob. And
I know.
think
Oh, you poor guy.
prefer to look at the clock.
That's right. That's well, you know, that's very, very, very sad. Listen, Bob, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't start off by very quickly asking you about this broadcast. Let me just start by asking you, what got you started broadcasting about municipal politics? How long have you been doing it for?
Well, basically since January 2nd. I guess the reason that I got into the show was that over the years I found that when people run for any kind of political office, you very seldom get a chance to find out who the real person is. You're always reading about their platforms, or you're seeing their signs, and when you go to a candidate's debate, it's really a foreign type of thing because everybody has their questions and everybody's got their lines. And during a couple of elections, a couple of provincial and federal elections, I started bringing in the candidates from the different parties. And as we were sitting here talking to the candidates, it became very nice to be able to find out that, hey, these are real people. And even when I take a look at the list of people that I've talked to on the show up until a couple of weeks ago, I haven't met a bad person. All the candidates are good people. They have good, intentions. They all want to do well. And so this is a chance to sit down and say, well, let's talk. Let's have a chat. The only thing we're missing is a cup of coffee if we were sitting in Tim Hortons. And people have a chance to listen to you while you're explaining what's behind some of the reasons that you're running. And the reason that I wanted to start archiving them and putting them on video was so that they could be kept and watched on demand. Much like our city council meetings are now. If you happen to miss the council meeting, you can always go and watch it on demand. So what's being created now is more or less a channel. It's a site where people can go back and they can listen to the issues that were discussed back in the year 2014 leading up to the election, and my intent is following the election to continue with the show so that every now and then we've got counselors coming in, so now that it's a meet the counselors and speak to your counselors, and we can get into the radio, like the phone call-ins and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into a debate. I didn't want to have people on the show debating each other. That's why it was one-on-one, because it was, let's find out who you are. Let's find out what you're talking about. And surprisingly, a lot of people are singing the same tune. So the big issue now with voters is who to select that you think is going to have the best chance of putting that plan into action and making it happen. It's almost like picking a hockey team. Every single person that comes out for the tryout wants to play. And they all want to score, and they all want to be part of the team, but the coach has to say, well, who are we going to pick that we think has the best chance of working with the rest of the linemen, and making things happen, so at the end of the day, you're accomplishing something. The difficulty with city council is that the people picking the team come from 12 different areas. And so you're really into this conundrum now, and it's one that I've looked at. It's when I get elected from Ward 5, am I sitting there now saying I'm looking at the entire team? Well, I can pick maybe 80% of the issues that the council is going to deal with that involves the entire region. There's about 80% of the issues. So you are working as a team, but at the end of the day, you're speaking for your constituents. I almost say that the constituents in the ward are like your clients. They're the ones that have paid for you. They paid for you with votes or with non-votes. Because I think the number of votes that you have against you is something that a councillor has to look at and say, I may have got 40% of the popular vote in my ward, I may have got 50%, I may have got 35%. There's a lot of people who didn't vote for me, but I have to represent them, and I have to represent the silent majority who didn't come out to vote. So it becomes one of these situations of, who are you gonna vote for that is, you've got more than just what they're telling you they're gonna do. What have they done? And I look at the sports analogy again. No athlete ever gets a contract based on what they're gonna do in the next 5 years. They get a contract based on what they've done in the previous 5 years, and the owner hopes they're gonna continue to do it in the next 5 years. So when you're picking your counselor, you really have to take a look at what have they done that's gonna help them do the job on city council. Not what have they done that has helped them at work, or what have they done that's helped them in minor hockey or whatever else they've done. Yes, it's nice that they're family, and it's nice that they've got grandchildren, but what have they done that you can look at and say, yeah, because of their experience here, I'm pretty sure they're gonna be able to handle the pressures at council.
Well, wow, there's
Yeah, where do you start?
Well, I was gonna say, there's so much that you just said that I would love to get into. I'm gonna start by asking you a question that's off script that I asked last week. What are your thoughts on the ward model that we have? Is this something we need to be looking at changing? Do we need at-large counselors? This is something that other cities have different solutions for. Are the citizens of this city being well served with the 12-ward model that we've got?
The 12-ward model will work, but it's not working the way it's divided up right now. Because in the 12-ward model, what you should have is as close as possible to the common interest and common, community within your ward. The ward 5, for example, is a huge ward. I mean, it's a really important ward. I'm not endorsing anybody. Ron DePuy did a pretty good job on Ward 5 because it's the core. If there's a central ward in Sudbury, it's Ward 5, because if you look at the map, it's right in the middle. It's got a real important part of Sudbury, the corner of LaSalle and Notre Dame, all the way down to the tracks, and includes Ryan Heights, all the way up to Kent Court, and all the way over to the Drummond Street and Village Crescent area. It's really common. So when you take a look at the valley, the valley's got this kind of development mode going on. And you've got the industrial base and the business base of the Sudbury section, and then you've got the Valley East Industrial Park. It's a huge ward, and it's really important to the rest of the city. So I like the Ward 5 area because it can be a leader. It can really be a leader, and it is almost the downtown core. Like you've got a downtown, and I think you've got Ward 5, which is another downtown that has a real different perspective. So what do you do with the wards? Well, you have to take a look at redefining and redrawing the wards. Cape Rail I really don't think it makes sense to have Cape Rail grouped with Garson. Cape Rail should be grouped with Hammer. Now, when that happens, Hammer's gonna have to take some of its Ward 6 is gonna have to take a little chunk off that and move it into Ward 5. And then the Sudbury portion of Ward 5 is better served, I believe, with either the Donovan area or the other Ward 12 over toward down the south. So when you redraw all of that, and this is why a lot of people have been asking me, why are you running in a ward where you don't live? I say, well, I live in Valtorez. And when the next boundaries are drawn, that Valtorez chunk has to go into Ward 5. So when people want to talk to me about an example of being a visionary, I say, well, I am a visionary. I am running in the ward where I am going to be in when the wards are redrawn, because the wards have to be redrawn. And if there are two wards that have to be redrawn, they are Ward 5, Ward 6, and Ward 7, those three wards. So come the next election, I will be in Ward 5. So it's one of these things. Now then you get into the next question. Do you need councillors at large? I don't like councillors at large. I think I would probably do well as a councillor at large. But what happens then is you don't have clients to represent. You're representing everybody. Who do you call if you're a councillor at large? If you're having trouble in the valley in Ward 5, who do you call if you've elected 12 councillors at large? So I think what we have to get back to is this whole mindset that when you're elected by ward constituents, you are speaking for those constituents. You are no longer speaking for Bob Kirwan, because just as a lawyer would have to represent his clients, a lawyer has to get in front of a judge and say, I'm not telling you whether I'm in favor of what I'm saying. This is what my people have told me. You have another problem. The only way that you know what the people in your ward are thinking is to become totally immersed in the community. So that means you have to get out into you can't go to a town hall meeting and say, what do you people think? Because you're gonna get 20 people come out and you're gonna hear that one line. You can't go to a CAN meeting and say, what do the CAN, what should we do? Because the CANs are volunteer, they're not elected, they don't get elected. They don't have any responsibility. And on Facebook, well, you got a little bit of better feedback on Facebook, but you have to get out into the community. You have to be with the church groups. You have to be helping organize. They had a potato festival this weekend, and I was part of the organizing committee. It's nice you can dovetail. I would have loved to be a counselor. I would have loved to have the Healthy Community Initiative funds, because the Potato Festival was one of those initiatives that the HCI fund was created for. They went on zero budget. All they would have needed was maybe $1,000 or $2,000, and it would have provided them with the extra stuff that they weren't able to get because they didn't have a budget. Once that starts, they can run with that year after year after year. You probably don't have to give them any more money after that. So when you come across this church group that wants to start something, they need a $500 piece of equipment, or they need something. Having the ability to say, you know what, I can give you something that's going to kickstart that, but you don't have the opportunity unless you get involved in the community. So you can't just sit there and say, apply to me when you want something. You have to be in there, and you have to say, you know what, I've seen what this group is doing. How would this group like to get involved in a project like this? Now, most of them would say, love it, but we just don't have the funds. How about if I provided you with the funds this year to start? And all of a sudden, bang, you've got all kinds of things happening.
Now, you've brought me to a really, really interesting topic, and I mean, we've been hearing almost a uniform line on the HCI funds. Everyone, it seems like the opinion that you have on HCI funds runs sort of counter to what a lot of people who are running for council have, and I want to wade into this very, very quickly with you. This weekend, the Sudbury Star comment boards, of course, which are the wonderful domain of anonymous trolls.
You find out everything you need to know about the Superstar comments.
Oh, that's right, indeed. They were lit up this weekend, absolutely, by comments that you've made. And I want to quote directly from your website, and I want to give you an opportunity of maybe of fleshing this out for us a little bit. And I want to quote directly from the website.
You have to start with the line that says, my website was the most sophisticated. And don't forget that one. It said that my website was the most sophisticated in the city.
That was a good one, but I want to press you a little bit on this HCI issue here, Bob. I do not think, and I'm quoting here, I do not think it is a responsible position for any candidate to claim that they are in favor of outright abolishing the HCI fund. This is something that has to be discussed and debated upon rationally and objectively following the election while exploring both the pros and cons of the program. And if the main argument is that councillors cannot be trusted to spend the money fairly and transparently, what is that saying about the quality of councillor who's been elected? The HCI fund can really help Ward 5, and I intend to use it effectively. I am not going to stand up and tell everyone that I cannot be fair, transparent, and honest with this money. This is $50,000 per year that can be used directly to help local groups and organizations. I think the most responsible position is to state that it is something that will be examined carefully by the next city council before a decision is made.
So when you take a look at that comment, anyone who is going to be critical of the way that is written has one thing in mind, and they are fixated on destroying the HCI fund. What I was alluding to was, if you've got a $50,000 fund that as an elected representative of Ward 5, you have to help Ward 5, why would you elect somebody that you don't think you can trust to spend that $50,000? What is that saying about the voters, about who they're picking to represent them? You're saying, I don't trust you to handle $50,000, but go and handle 500 million. So they're saying, I don't trust you with 50 grand, but go and do the best you can with 500 million. Well, for goodness sakes, any councillor is going to say, I don't have anything to do with it, I wouldn't even look at their name. I would say, then you have no confidence in yourself to be open and transparent. And how are you going to say to the church group that really needs that $1,000 of equipment so that they can cultivate the community garden like we've got in Bruce Avenue, on Balmoral Court, and in Ryan Heights? And I had so many calls from the valley saying, hey, can we do something like this in our neighborhood playground? I said, absolutely, all you need is a few $1,000s, and all of a sudden now you've got a place where, who's gonna say that, no, we don't trust our counselor to make that kind of decision?
So Bob, what do you think it says then? What do you think it says about, because I mean, as I said, I mean, even certainly last week, and as I've been doing research, going through the words, this is a position that very few, if anyone, is willing to come out and say that you've taken. I mean, it's not a popular position in terms of the let's say the zeitgeist of this election. So what would you say to your fellow candidates when it comes to this fund? What do you think that
I would
they
say
need to know about
I would
it?
say that the silent majority that I've got to know in my ward are in favor of my position. The vocal minority, remember, I had a union background. I was a union president. I was involved in collective bargaining for 20 years. And when you go to a union meeting, you hear 5 people speaking. You've got 1,000 people in there, 5 people are speaking, and they're speaking, and they think they speak on behalf, they're not. And what we're hearing are the people who have been so against the HCI fund for 2 or 3 years. They have used it to slam existing councillors, they have used it to discredit them, they have used it, and they're trying to use it to me. Again, I say, the way that was written up, if anybody was to look at that and say, no, I don't believe in it, that is out, I wouldn't vote for him with that thinking, where I'm saying, I will argue in favor of it because it's good. I'm only 1 out of 13 people. If I can't convince the rest of them that, yeah, it is good for my community, then that's it. But we've got to look at it. The other question is, and this is what I'm saying, it's all about openness and transparency. Well, you can have openness and transparency. It's on the website. You can see every single penny that's been spent on that HCI fund. So the people who say it's not transparent, they're trying to taint the image for the people who may not have the ability to go out there. And I say, am I looking for Christmas cards when I get elected? No, I'm looking to fight for Ward 5. And I am confident that if the HCI fund was put to a referendum, the overwhelming majority would say, we want that $50,000 to help our ward. And they would not go with the vocal minority in this.
Now, Bob, I want to get a little bit more into this because your position is very nuanced. Where do you stand in terms of, I mean, some of the other ideas surrounding HCI that have been floated, handing it to the cans, handing it to staff?
Yeah, okay,
I mean,
here's-
where
Okay,
do you go?
those are two things. The CAN is a volunteer group. The councillor is elected by the people in the ward. You can have an interest group go to a CAN meeting, become the CAN, and they can control where that money goes anywhere. They can control where the $50,000, they're not held accountable. There's no accountability there. It's the elected representative that's held accountable. So handing it to the CAN, no. Should the CAN be used? Absolutely. I mean, if the CAN comes up with an initiative and they say, hey, wow, we got this idea, we got this group that really wants to go with it, can we talk to you about it? You know what, come and talk to me about it, let's go. Because I'm looking at this saying, you know, if you've got $50,000, you can probably start a new initiative every month. $4,000 will go a long way to start a new initiative, but it's, the word initiative has been missing in this. I would not take $5,000 and give it to the Valley East Days. Because the Valley East Days already has sponsorship. The Valley East Days makes money. The Valley East Days is not a new initiative. I would give it to the Potato Festival because it was a new initiative. I would give it to the Valley View Community Church because they run drive-in movies on an outside screen on the side of their wall every summer. But what they needed this year was to repaint the wall because they needed a bigger screen because they were getting too many people coming out, and they needed a new screen, and a new projector. They didn't have the money for it. That would be a good use of money because it's a one-time expenditure and it kicks off. The community gardens is another one. So why would I say, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this? Turning it over to the staff, all I have to say is, oh my God. What have we been hearing from the same group that doesn't want the HIC for the last 4 years about how the staff is spending money? And now they're saying, turn it over to staff and let the staff decide what to do with it? That's my answer. Oh my God. Take it from an elected representative, give it in control of the staff. They have $600,000. That wouldn't even be enough to run one office for one of the executive officers. So it's like, we can do so much good with this. So anybody that's coming against this, and I really loved that post because Kirwan has the most sophisticated website of everybody, and look at what he's saying about the HIC fund. Wow. We're gonna consult, we're gonna examine, we're gonna, and you have to get involved with your community. Yeah, we're doing everything that we want a councillor to do, but they're against it because I'm in favor of the HCI fund. That is not the majority.
It's so interesting. you know, I mean, those comment boards are, you know, as you say, I mean, it's such an interesting, such a myopic.
You understand what I
but-
mean? I'm responsible for hearing the voices of the people who don't go on those
Right.
comment boards.
Mhm. So I want to press you a little bit though, because this issue did come up this weekend with the ombudsman Andre Marin, and
Yep.
he went on record as and saying, I mean, and I'm quoting here from him.
Yeah.
Former federal cabinet minister Bev Oda lost her job over essentially expensing a $16 bill for orange juice. Yet each Sudbury councillor can spend $200,000 in the 4-year span between elections without ombudsman oversight. So, I mean, where do you stand on where the ombudsman comes in?
Mr. Marin is venturing into an area that is discrediting his office. And I will stand up. I want an ombudsman. I want the office of the Ontario Ombudsman to be looking after our community, our interests. I want, if there is a problem, people make a complaint to the Ontario Ombudsman and somebody is appointed. If Mr. Marin is appointed, I will point to things like this and I will say there is a bias on that particular individual coming into this town. He is already biased, he's already prejudiced, and he is coming in looking for problems. I want an independent person who doesn't have a baggage, and I know this will get all kinds of, Mr. Marin, he's a wonderful person. No, Mr. Marin is a lawyer. And when you look at the ombudsman, the rules of the ombudsman has immense investigative powers. The ombudsman can investigate everything. The ombudsman has no authority to enforce his recommendations. And it says that right on the website, right under the rules of procedure. The ombudsman can make the presentation, can indicate what his recommendations are, and he has to stop there. The council then has to take that recommendation and decide what to do with it. Most of the time, they're gonna follow the recommendations. But he cannot criticize the decision of the council. And this is where I think the pushback has come, because the ombudsman has taken the position, I'm gonna tell the city of Greater Sudbury what they have to do. Nobody cast a vote for the ombudsman. And that's where he ran into the trouble. The people who have to answer for these decisions that the ombudsman is recommending is the city council. But the ombudsman, honest to God, do the investigation, please. I'm a school board trustee, still a school board trustee till December. I welcome an ombudsman. I think it's gonna be the best thing that has ever happened to school boards to have an ombudsman now, because if you have problems, you can complain to somebody. But it's not just the public that can complain, it's fellow trustees who can complain. Because if I, as a counselor on the city council, feel that what council is doing is wrong, I can complain to the ombudsman and say, would you come in and investigate? Because right now it's 12-1 against me. I can't go anywhere, but I know what they're doing is wrong. Come in and investigate. And he can come in, investigate, and make the recommendation. But for Mr. Marin to come up during an election campaign and make that kind of comment, that's a comment that discredits every single person who's still on council. And that is a political statement that is designed to affect the results of this election. He should not be trying to affect the results of the election. And honest, if he ever pulls something like that and I'm sitting there, I will challenge him with the Ministry of Attorney General. And I will ask to have him removed from office, because he's not supposed to be doing that. It's he's overstepped his authority. Do I want an ombudsman? Absolutely. For my protection as much as anybody else. Do I want an Auditor General? Absolutely. Do I want an Integrity Commissioner? I'm a mortgage agent right now, so I'm covered by the Code of Conduct for the Financial Services Commission of Ontario. I'm a member of the Ontario College of Teachers, so I'm governed by the College of Teachers Act. And I'm a school board trustee, and I'm governed by the Code of Conduct with the school board. I've got more codes of conduct on me than you can shake a stick at. I want this. But they have a role to play. And they shouldn't go into the political field. Otherwise, now what you've got is you've got a body that's a political animal. And they've already shown a bias against the city of Greater Sudbury. I hope the rest of the staff doesn't. And I think every time a complaint is filed to the Ontario Ombudsman, it should go on a rotational basis and a different person should come in. I know that what Andre Marin wants to do